I was recently talking with a friend slash coworker about my diagnosis 14-ish years ago and how I came so far since then. And I really came up with two things that I changed within myself that really were the building blocks to helping me to this point. And those two things were acceptance and having insight into my mental health symptoms and how to solve them up to that point. So, I wanted to talk about how insight really helps and how to also be more accepting of your diagnosis so that it will help you throughout the future. Because there are a lot of different steps, there are a lot of different things that you have to do. So please like and subscribe if you would like to hear those things, and we'll just get right into it. So I wanted to start with a quote that is actually from a Harry Potter book, and it's quoted by Dumbledore. But understanding is the first step to acceptance, and only with acceptance can there be recovery. And I found this on a website actually, and I thought it was so fitting that, understanding, and I think this like goes through everything as it relates to mental illness. Understanding your diagnosis, your what you have to deal with, understanding your symptoms and what you have to do to get through them is the first step towards accepting that you have to deal with this, for some of us, the rest of our lives. And then only then, after you have understood and accepted what you're going through, can you start to recover from it. I thought that was so fitting, and I just wanted to start out with that. But acceptance of a diagnosis is not as easy as it sounds. I personally went through so many ups and downs of acceptance. Like, I thought in high school I was more accepting of it, but I got to college and had like a lot of manic episodes since then, and I became less accepting of it, and it was a journey. And so I think it's a dynamic process. It's not going to be like a steady like, oh, I'm accepting and then I'm there. Basically, you can like move around in the realm of like denial and anger and kind of resentment for the world, kind of, for having this whole situation be put on you, I guess. And I think with acceptance you have to go through a lot of those emotions and really get down to what can I do now moving forward, instead of thinking about all the things that are unfair, that you can't do, basically, because we all are capable of so many things. It's often our own minds that inhibit us from being able to accomplish whatever we want to accomplish. So I think when it comes to that, denial is so common when it comes to diagnoses. Um, like, that's one of the first things that comes up. You're like, this isn't real, this isn't happening, I'm not gonna have to deal with this forever. And it kind of inhibits like growth and development when it comes to dealing with something like a mental health problem or mental health illness. So having this insight into how you're dealing with things, how things aren't going right. Some people, I think, don't really acknowledge that there's a problem, and I feel like the first thing in having insight into your mental health is that you have to realize that a problem is occurring and it is affecting you and that you have to take steps to solve it. Also, it's important to note that there are symptoms that get in the way of thinking this way and having this insight. I know that when I'm really, really manic, I tend to not be able to think about things clearly. I think I'm fine. I think I can do everything. And really, I'm just inhibiting my own growth and inhibiting my recovery and into like becoming more stable. I think another thing that's really hard is recognizing denial, because sometimes we don't even realize that we're in denial until someone points it out, and even then we can deny that we're in denial, you know? So there are so many things that get in the way of just realizing that there's a problem and that you need to take the steps to solve them, because you can't solve a problem that you don't think you have, basically. I think that in general, I've just more recently actually been really on top of noticing when things are changing, and I know that Nick has been a big part of that too. He's helped me notice so many things. But I remember in middle school when things were first starting, I mean, we're all like really kind of, emotionally immature in middle school. And we haven't fully, recognized our own feelings and really thought about our own feelings in that way. We kind of just act on them. So I think in middle school it's really hard for me to start recognizing those things and acting in a way that would be healing for me. So it wasn't until like way later in high school or maybe even college that I started to realize these are the things that I need to do, and that's because I know I need to do them, not because someone else is telling me that I need to do them. But yeah, I'm gonna get into the part of kind of explaining how we can be more accepting of ourselves and just like the first steps to take in that. I know acceptance is kind of like a whole frame of mind, not necessarily like just actions to take, but these things will definitely help in the long run in, becoming more accepting of a diagnosis and a mental illness and just helping move forward. So, the first thing is developing a positive self-image. And I know that even people without a mental illness have trouble with, self-images, and there's so many people that have low self-esteem. But I think a big part of this whole new diagnosis thing is that you start to feel shameful, you start to feel like a little bit guilty, and you feel like the stigma is kind of sinking in, and you feel it just kind of, you feel like you're judging yourself because the world kind of judges that you, I guess, the same way. I'm not saying you as in like you as a person, but like in general. Like the world kind of doesn't really understand mental health fully yet. And I know that different cultures are in different stages for that, but in America even, we are trying to talk about mental health more, but it's not fully there yet. And I know in the workplace, there can be a lot of stigma and a lot of, we're not going to hire you because you're a liability sort of thing. So I think it's important to move past the stigma, not only in yourself, but also when thinking about others. And knowing that this mental health problem doesn't define you as a person. It is a part of who you are, and you will have to integrate it into, a part of who you are so that you can change your lifestyle in a way that will accommodate this new diagnosis. But it shouldn't necessarily change who you are at the core, because you are still like the person that you are, and you can still be the sibling, the parent, the teacher, or whatever occupation you have. You're still gonna be those things, but you just have to add this other thing on top of it. Just like, say you're getting married or something, you are now like a spouse to someone. So it's just a new thing that you have to add to your whole bucket of, I wouldn't want to say labels necessarily, but like part of your identity. Um, so I think it really is important to acknowledge that you have this new part of you that you have to discover, that you have to learn how to accommodate, basically. So you have to change the way you live, or the way that you should live, based on this new diagnosis, basically. Um, there are also things that you can do to support acceptance. And I know that these things come with the mindset of accepting a diagnosis, but if you are prescribed to take medications, you should probably take them. I know that I have a lot of followers that don't necessarily agree with that. And I'm kind of on the fence about it too. I know that in the past, medications have helped me to an extent, but they don't solve all the problems. And I definitely have side effects that I don't particularly enjoy. But for me, I think they do help me maintain a semblance of stability. But things like taking medications can be really unstable if you're not fully accepting of your diagnosis. I know the people that have been on them, then off them, then on them, then off them, and it's just like really chaotic. And that's a big part of not accepting a diagnosis, is just not accepting that you need to take medications in the first place. And for bipolar, it is really common for people to be like, well, I'm feeling really good now, I don't need to take them anymore, sort of thing. But that's not necessarily the case, because those medications are helping you become stable. Also, things like going to therapy can help. I know that I'm not in therapy right now. I only see like a nurse practitioner for everything that I deal with, and she prescribes medications and checks in on me and stuff. Another thing that you can do to support acceptance is create a healthy schedule, and that includes like, sleeping and eating regularly, and also keeping busy with positive positive activities. Like, these can be hobbies. I wouldn't necessarily recommend for people with mental illness, engage in like partying and drugs all the time, because that can be really disruptive to mental health and stability. Of course, these things can happen sometimes, say if you're going to a wedding or whatever, but it's important to know that we can't necessarily live the same lifestyle that other people might be able to if we want to maintain stability. Other things that you can focus on to support acceptance is just also creating relationships that promote acceptance. Like, people in your life really have an impact on the way that we live it. So people that are in denial as well, or aren't supporting you, or are encouraging negative lifestyles, are just people that you want to take a little distance from. You want to create that distance so that you're not as affected by, I guess, their I don't want to say negativity or whatever, but basically it'll kind of hold you back from becoming accepting of yourself and what you need if people who are inhibiting that are close to you and kind of influencing you. So having people around that are supportive, that will help you out, that will support healthy lifestyles, those are the people that you want to keep close and that you want to create stronger friendships with and relationships. um I am so fortunate to have family that is so supportive of me and my diagnosis. They try to help me out through everything, and I know in the past I've been like, it feels a little bit like they're crowding me, or that I'm not able to grow as a person because they're helping too much. But I think without them, I would have never gotten this far. And I also owe credit to Nick and all my friends who have stuck by me through all my ups and downs, because there are so many people in my life that have stayed, and there are just as many who have come and gone, just not necessarily because of anything that me or them did, but or I or them, whatever, grammar. But mostly growing apart, or you know, just me not being there all the time, or me doing something during mania. But it's not necessarily anything they did or something severe I did. It's just happened that way, and unfortunately that's just the way it was because they didn't know everything about me at the time, and I wasn't willing to share necessarily. So that's another thing. But you want to have the kind of support that will help you, basically, and you don't want to have the people that will inhibit your growth. You want people that will help you also manage your symptoms, and you don't always have to have like everyone in your life do that, but it helps to have like a couple people that know you really well and see you all the time to kind of like keep an eye on your ups and downs and check in on you, basically. The last thing I want to mention is that acceptance is a huge emotional experience. It is not just one thing. It's a lot of little things. You're trying to initially like move past shame, and that's a whole experience in itself. And then there's also like grief and sometimes trauma or anger that goes along with this. But there's so many things and negative emotions that we have to get through, and sometimes they're just kind of sitting there and we don't process them and we don't get through them. So we have to make space for these emotions, and I feel like oftentimes we try to shove them down and not address them, but it's really important to address them so that we can be accepting of ourselves, accepting of our diagnoses or diagnosis, and just accepting of who we are as a person and every part of who we are. I think that is all I have for now, but I hope that wherever you are in your journey, that you learn to become accepting of who you are and every part of who you are. And yeah. So if you like this video, please like and subscribe if you haven't already. And I will see you all next week.